What's up, fam? My name's Joshua Morgan. Welcome back to another Subharmonicon video. I just want to kind of touch on why I think the Subharmonicon is the best possible semi-modular eurorack. There's tons of videos already on the Subharmonicon as a standalone unit and within the ecosystem of the Moog, DFAM, and Mother 32. But I wanted to touch on why it's such a powerful semi-modular eurorack system. From left to right here, we have two 4-step sequencers and 4 assignable clock dividers for those sequencers. And this is very powerful because if you leave these two switches off, where the step sequencers are not tracking the voltage for the oscillators, but just step sequencers on their own, you have the sequence 1 and sequence 2 pitch, as well as the overall clock value output. This is very powerful because you can use these as step sequencers for other things in your eurorack, as well as the trigger output. If you leave this off, the envelope generator off, you have a trigger input and a overall trigger output. You can use the trigger output to trigger envelopes or events. You can use these clocks to trigger envelopes or events. You have a trigger input. In addition, you have every oscillator available as an output, which means that you can patch each oscillator to its own separate voice and trigger it however you would like, from the clocks, from the trigger, from a separate trigger. But enough explaining, let's just kind of dive into some patches. So this was a patch that was shared with me by JT Salinger of the Bleeple. And what I'm doing here is taking the sub-oscillators directly into the After Later Audio QARV and going out of the last VCA output into my After Later Audio Filthy filter, and all of those filter shapes are being sent into the sequential switch, which I can control with CV, but for now I'm just leaving it on the high pass mode, and I have a little bit of cross modulation happening with the QARV, and that is what this sounds like. So this is a very similar patch, but what I have going on here is all of the sub-oscillators are going into a sequential switch, which is going out into the After Later Filthy filter. All of the filter shapes are now going into the VCA of the QARV, and sequencer 1 from the Subharmonicon is going into the control voltage of the sequential switch, as well as the both input for channel 2 of the QARV, and sequencer 2 is going into the FM input, control input for the cutoff of the Filthy filter. And that's what this sounds like. So this patch is pretty similar to the last one, although I have all of the Subharmonicons sub-oscillators going into a mixer, and all of the filthy filters, filter shapes going into a sequential switch. Channels 3 and 4 of the QARV are being triggered by the Subharmonicon. Channel 3 is the VCA envelope. Channel 4 is the VCF envelope. Channel 1 of the QARV is a cycling LFO, which is being influenced, its attack stage is being influenced by sequencer 1 of the Subharmonicon. The channel 2 is influencing the sequential switch, and sequencer 2, repatch this very quickly, sequencer 2 of the Subharmonicon is affecting the release stage of channel 2 as LFO. The output of LFO 1 is affecting the attack stage of LFO 2. And that's what this sounds like. But honestly, this is my favorite patch to do with the Subharmonicon, which is to take all of the sub-oscillators out into the 4-channel mixer, to tune all of the sub-oscillators an octave down from the main VCO to have VCO 1 an octave lower than VCO 2. I then go out of the 4-channel mixer into the filthy filter, out of the filthy filter's wave shapes into the sequential switch, which I sequence via MIDI to CV with the OPZ and Digitone, which is off-screen. That output of the switch, again, goes to the input of channel 3. Channel 3 is my envelope for my VCA. The channel 4 is the envelope for my VCF here. I use channel 2 of the QARV for portamento or slew modulation. I use channel 1 in LFO mode, and I have sequencer 1 influencing the attack of that LFO, and sequencer 2 from the Subharmonicon influencing the release of that LFO. And I really like the fat bass that I get from this patch, and it leaves VCO 1 and 2 free in the Subharmonicon. I'm just going VCA out from the Subharmonicon into a separate channel on my Mackie mixer here. And that's what this sounds like. A simple drum beat coming from the Digitone. Bring in the rest of the Subharmonicon, or the other voice, rather. I'll just kind of jam on this patch for a minute. So I hope that you can see what the Subharmonicon is capable of by adding just a handful of other Eurorack modules. If you already own a Subharmonicon and haven't thought about going down the rabbit hole that is Eurorack, maybe you would think about that now. You really don't need much to get going with it, just some envelopes, filter, VCA. I highly recommend the QARV from After Later Audio. In any case, I have been and will continue to be Joshua Morgan. If you like this video, hit the like button and the subscribe button, to do that. But just do that. Peace, fam.